Mary is with Pro Seniors. It's an organization that was started in 1975, and its mission, which Mary could probably tell you a little bit better than me, is to provide legal assistance to elderly in the areas of like identity theft and insurance and long-term care, and in legal stuff as well. So I will let Mary take it from here. And she's got some cool stuff in her presentation. We're going to actually hear some live scams going on in her presentation. So enjoy the rest of lunch. Dessert will be out with some coffee. And Mary, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Well, gosh, it got quiet. Talk amongst yourselves. No, all right, so as Peyton mentioned, Pro Seniors has been around since 1975, and we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. And we're very excited about that because you can imagine there are a lot of people who've been eligible for our services, but that's an increasing number. And we actually help seniors not only resolve problems once they've occurred, we also try to help people prevent problems and avoid things like financial exploitation and fraud and identity theft. And our point is that by equipping people and giving them the information they need, that we can help to enhance their independence and their quality of life. So most people hear about Pro Seniors by word of mouth, so you may never need our services. I hope that you never need to contact us for legal assistance, but you may be able to really help someone you love or someone you know by being in a conversation with them about something and you think, oh, they need to really call Pro Seniors. They can get a legal consultation appointment by telephone, they don't have to go anywhere, and they can get some help, get some advice about their situation. So Ohio currently has the 7th highest number of seniors in the United States, which makes this perfect target audience. You know, we want to reach the people who are likely to be impacted by these issues, because the more that we were talking at lunch, the more that we can help people to recognize and avoid potential scams and fraud and exploitation, the more that those individuals can protect themselves. Because unfortunately, it's very difficult with limited resources for law enforcement to really take on every single criminal and their latest creative approach to scamming us. But by 2020, 2.95 million Ohioans are going to be 60 or older, and that's a very large voting bloc. So you all have a lot of voice, not only in protecting yourselves, but also in talking to our legislators about what protections are in place and how can we all be part of the solution. Elders throughout the U.S. lose an estimated $2.6 billion or more annually due to elder financial abuse and exploitation. And that sounds just, well, it's very dramatic, but I mean, it sounds quite devastating. And it's why we need to have conversations like the one we're having today. It's why we need to have seminars like this, because I can't guarantee that there's a member of law enforcement to track down every one of those frauds. But I can guarantee that each of us can equip ourselves to avoid them. The Administration on Aging reports that financial abuse was the cause of 40% of the cases of elder abuse reported. What's important too is that only a minimum of the actual cases of abuse get reported, maybe 1 in 5 cases. And it has a broader impact. It's not just about the money that's lost, it's also about the impact that has on someone's health, on their mental health, on getting health care in the future. If someone steals your identity, as Pam mentioned, and they use that to create another health care identity, they can start to access health care benefits that then when you try to access those later, they're no longer available because according to your medical record, you've already had that service. Or they may create a false identity and it may alter your medical record, and then when you go in to have some sort of procedure, they have the wrong information. So who's at risk? 2.1 million older Americans a year are victims of physical, psychological, and other forms of abuse. As I said, it may be more than 5 times that are actually occurring but are not being reported. I've looked at a lot of studies and read a lot on this, and what I heard in and what I've read is that fraud victims report that they are more likely to believe promises that are too good to be true. We talked about some of those at lunch, you know, you've won a cruise, you've won a vacation, you get free tickets to Disney and the vacation. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Older men who were victims of fraud report that they actually had a lot of experience of investing, and so they thought that they would not succumb to any kind of attempts to defraud them. And they also lost the most money because of that. Women, on the other hand, who had been victims of fraud, were more vulnerable to petty fraud. They were more likely to send in the $50 fee to collect on a sweepstakes win. And 47% of financial planners who were surveyed have actually seen an increase in fraud or abuse in the past 5 years. So it's an increasing problem, not just because of the aging baby boomers, but also maybe because as people are becoming more aware, they're also reporting it more. We hope that reporting is going up too, not just that fraud is going up. Being defrauded, as I said, it's more likely to have a substantial emotional impact in addition to the impact it has on you financially. But actually 37% of those surveyed said that it was likely to have a substantial emotional impact, compared to 5% said that it would have a substantial financial impact. Losing your confidence when you've been scammed can really take its toll on you. It's not just the money that you've lost, it's the idea that, as Pam had mentioned, the example of the person who thought that she'd been a victim of identity theft, and in fact she had some short-term memory issues and probably some dementia. That can be devastating, and that can impact you far beyond the actual financial loss. It makes you question your judgment, and it's so much better to be safe and to report than to wait until you've been a victim and then hide it. Recently, my aunt, she's 93, she's independent, she lives on her own, and she's a pretty savvy customer, and but she fell for there's something called the Notch babies, and it's Social Security beneficiaries who were born between 1917 and 1921. And there's an organization called the Senior Citizens League that sends out these very official-looking mailings that say, you're victims. You should be getting more Social Security than you're getting, and we're going to do something about it. Just send us $10 and we'll work on your behalf, and please sign this petition. So she's been getting these letters for years. And then a couple weeks ago, she got a call, and someone said, well, we're calling from Social Security. We want to know if you got your letter and your increase, because you're in that range. And she said, well, no, I didn't get it. But because she'd been getting those mailings, she fell for it. And within a couple of hours of this occurring, she's like, no, that's not right. She had given them all of her account information. She'd given them her Social Security number, her credit card number, her bank account numbers. So thankfully, and I do see her regularly, but still she fell for this. But thankfully, when she was talking to her daughter later in the day, she said, Judy, I don't think this is right. What should we do? And so I talked to her daughter, and they closed the accounts. They did everything Pam said. Closed the accounts, notified her credit card, all the things that she needed to do, but it still took an emotional toll on her. You know, she still was so embarrassed by it, and I said to her daughter, I said, tell her to tell her friends. Now my aunt, she grew up in Cincinnati. She still has breakfast once a month with people who she went to elementary school with, and which I think is pretty cool. And I said, tell your friends. And she often talks to them on the phone, and she did. She said, you know, I fell for this thing. Watch out for this. Because, you know, I can tell you what scams to watch out for. I can tell you the calls that I've gotten, but really it's when your peers tell you that they've fallen for this, because we all think it can't happen to us. So I hope that if you're ever scammed, that you will make a point of telling others how you fell for it and why, because it can happen to any of us, and we're all the next target. Whoops.
Hope it's not too loud, but okay.
No. I got a phone call saying, Greco, I've had an accident. I'm out here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I got picked up. I've been drinking. I says, Jeff, is this you? it don't sound like you.
If they say it doesn't sound like you can say, well, in the accident, I hit my nose or something. First, you want to establish the trust again. You want to tell them to keep it between us. Send me 3,000 to 4,000. There was an accident. I can't get into details right now. I just want to let you know that I'm taking care of it. I got a good lawyer.
Look it up. Hey, Western Union, Central.
Perfect victim is somebody living alone over the age of 65. Go volunteer who they're wishing you were when you call them. So say, oh, you're not my grandson, you're my nephew, my great nephew. And usually there would be an accident involved or some kind of trouble with law enforcement. And you needed money to bail them out and to get home.
So at that time, we knew that we'd been taken.
It's just extremely important, no matter what the supposed grandchild says. It's very important to verify and to check.
How somebody that went to the bank, has the money, everything, has a receipt, and they'll say, before I give you the number, what's your pet dog's name? And that's shot.
I just hope that us going through this can help somebody else, so they don't have to be, so they don't lose anything.
So what you noticed there, and it's what we talked about, what you noticed there was, no. First they got the person anxious, and scammers call that getting them under the ether. So the first thing the caller does is create alarm. And they do that by triggering strong feelings, whether it's fear, greed, or urgency. In that case, they triggered the fear. My grandson's been injured. It's important to try to recognize the ruse. If you know that a caller is trying to get you into a particular state of mind or to trigger certain emotions, then you can know to watch out for any caller who calls you for any reason who's trying to rev you up. They might ask you about your relationship with your granddaughter or whether you have concerns about running out of money. Once they find something you care about, and they can trigger emotions in you, then they can throttle that up and get you to a heightened emotional state, and that's that ether. Because when we're in that heightened emotional state, we don't make the same decisions that we would make when we're calm and feel a sense of stability. And so why would they target people who are older than older adults? Because people over the age of 50 control 70% of the nation's wealth. Why would they go after people who don't have money when they can go after people who control most of the nation's wealth? Other qualities that make the older adult a better target: patriotism. You know, I mentioned the mailing that my aunt received from the Senior Citizens League. She gets mail all the time, a lot of it from the Republican Party, because she's an older adult, and she really wants to keep our country strong, and a lot of the mailing, it isn't even from a particular political party, that they've gotten her number. They have a profile about who she is as a target. She's somebody who is very patriotic. She wants to keep America strong. And so she responds more likely to surveys and to even giving small donations to mailings that look like they are official, look like they come from the government or from an organization that supports the values that she has. She is a little isolated. She has 6 children, but she lives alone. And so we were talking at lunch too. You know, it depends on how bored I am, whether I'm going to talk to that telemarketer on the phone or if I'm just going to hang up. You know, she likes to talk on the phone, and so she might be somebody who would be a good target for them because she might just enjoy having a conversation with someone, and she might not realize immediately that they're trying to get her to that certain point where, okay, now I've earned your trust, now maybe I can ask for something. Dependence on others. You know, if she were dependent on other people, it would be much easier to victimize her because she wouldn't want to put that at risk. And also, surveys have shown and studies have shown that older people have a desire to trust people. you know, we've all lived as long as we have lived, and psychologically, I think there is a general attempt by older adults, according to the studies, to try to put a positive spin on things. Let's not be negative. You know, you think about, at least for my aunt's generation, she grew up during the Depression. She lived through much rougher times than any of people my age have anything to talk about. And so, in the scheme of things, there's not a lot to be negative about. And I have noticed she's gotten much more positive over the years. She was never a negative person, but she does really tend to put a positive spin on things. And there are two additional reasons why older adults may be less likely to recognize a scam. And these are neurological reasons. Older adults may have less activity in the actual area of the brain that processes risk and subtle danger. That's pretty important, because that really makes us more at risk if we think, I'm going to know. If they're trying to scam me, I'm going to know. You saw the grandparent scam. He didn't know. Not because he's not an intelligent person. You know, the most likely person to be scammed is somebody who thinks they can't be scammed. That could be any one of us. Older adults, as I mentioned, also demonstrate an increasing bias against negativity. Why bemoan the negative stuff when we don't have to? It also can make you more vulnerable to being a target of a scam. Whoops. Okay.
For Ruth and Len Mitchell, their golden years in the Valley of the Sun are not so golden after all. 2 years before retiring to Arizona, they fell victim to a Ponzi scheme, losing $130,000. These are among the most common investment frauds. The criminal takes money from investors to pay off other investors until it all falls apart. Ruth and Len were taken in by their accountant, Barry Corkin, someone they trusted, someone who knew them, and seemed to know about money.
He had 2 big homes, he had boats, he had a Corvette, he had a Cadillac, he had trucks.
He looked trustworthy, and he was looked up to in the community. Ruth is a professional skater. Barry, the con artist, joined her skating club and lots of other clubs in their hometown, a common tactic of the investment crook.
They join everything they can join where they think that there will be people who have a few bucks that they can then give to them. A crime of affinity.
And once they're in the club, the dinners and the attention start, and the checkbooks open up.
He was a great con man. That's all I can say. Always kept a Bible on his desk. Always kept a Bible on his desk.
So, other characteristics of people who have reportedly been victims of fraud is they reported that they were more likely to attend sales presentations when offered a free meal or hotel stay in return. Not anything.
$20 a head.
Present company excluded. Enter their name in drawings to win a prize. So just know you're all very vulnerable to scam. That doesn't mean that you're being scammed. Allow salespeople to enter into their home to make a presentation and open and receive every piece of mail they receive. That's my aunt. She will open every piece of mail she receives. I visit her periodically just to go through mail and say, throw away, throw away, throw away, shred, throw away, throw. And she really appreciates it. I need to do it in my own house. More than a quarter of victims of financial fraud are over age 60. Again, fraud victims, these are fraud victims reporting on themselves saying, these are the things that I think made me more vulnerable. more interested in an investment that promised a guaranteed return, a free CD to save money, a necklace at a reduced price for a limited time, and new technology. And it doesn't make any of those things bad, it's just looking for what are the hooks that might draw me in and then make me more susceptible.
If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. In the current environment, anyone can be taken by an investment fraud. Food scams are against folks who know something about finance. They have cash in the bank.
I'd be on the phone with the victim purporting to be the president of a bank. And in all actuality, I'm at a payphone.
Oil and gas, and he worked for an oil company, and he was a PhD in chemistry.
They join everything they can join where there will be people who have a few bucks.
The common denominator are the persuasion tactics that the fraud artists use.
It's possible for a con artist to swamp our thinking processes by getting our emotions up so high.
That's the purpose of these persuasion tactics, to prevent you from thinking rationally.
That's what con artists call putting you underneath them.
The first line of defense is to verify who's talking to you.
Is this person licensed to do business? Is this product that he wants to sell registered to be sold?
If you're doing it for a licensed individual, it's most likely an instance of fraud.
You're already smart investors, but now you're trained fraud fighters.
So tell all your friends to ask and check. And thank you for joining us today.
And the materials that are referenced here and the websites, I'm going to actually send I'm going to be sending an email that will have links to the different organizations that are mentioned here so that you can click on and you can look up to see if an investment is licensed, if an investment advisor is licensed, and so forth, to see if it's appropriate. So if you see references mentioned here, those will be available as a follow-up to our presentations today. So, they mentioned characteristics of fraud that make someone more likely to be a victim. Fraud victims report that they're more interested in persuasion tactics, expose themselves to more sales situations, and are less likely to take preventative actions to protect themselves. Well, I will say that the fact that you're here today is that you're taking preventative actions to protect yourselves, and all the materials that you're going to go home with today, too, are tools for you to equip yourself so that you don't succumb to those scams. They mentioned other risk factors for investment fraud: owning high-risk investments, relying on friends, family, coworkers for advice. You know, the person who was the professional figure skater. She succumbed because this was a person she got to know through her circle of friends. People who are professional scammers and fraudsters, this is what they do. They first build themselves into your circle of friends and earn your confidence. That's why they're called con artists. Being open to new investment information, especially from an unreliable source. You know, is that a licensed investment? Is it a licensed investor? Failing to check the background of a professional, of an investment, or an investment professional. Inability to spot persuasion tactics used by fraudsters. So that's part of what you're equipping yourself with today, is this is what it looks like. Now, not that there's not going to be a new scam tomorrow, or even by the time we leave there today, but these are some things to look for. Sadly, when we ask who the perpetrator is, often adult children who are financially dependent on a parent become the perpetrators. So it's not just big frauds, it's not just fraud by someone you don't know or someone who's worked their way into your circle of acquaintances. Sadly, it's often someone who's financially dependent on you. And so some of what I'm going to talk about too is just making sure that you have appropriate boundaries in place and trusted professionals in place and documents in place so that you don't become a victim of fraud or exploitation by your own family. Family members and caregivers are culprits in 55% of the cases. even though the financial losses for the investment scams are usually larger. Undue influence is one of the most common that's in trusting relationships. So someone starts off, even a family member who maybe they moved in with you because they needed some help, and that was all fine until maybe you need more help and you need to go have some surgery, maybe you need a short stay in a rehabilitation facility. And now they're in your home and you're not in your home, and they're not eager for you to come home. And we've worked at Pro Seniors, some of our attorneys have worked with situations where they've actually had to evict a family member who had taken ownership of that property through misuse of powers of attorney and just some sleight of hand with some documents. And so it's very important that you pay attention to those dynamics when you're setting up those arrangements. And make sure you have good legal documents in place that make it very clear where the boundaries are and who's in charge. Effective prevention is really a combination of things. It's working with groups like the FBI, making sure that you understand who you can report to, what you can report, avoiding things like identity theft, working with law enforcement, working with advocacy groups like Pro Seniors, and regulatory agencies and adult protective services. You know, if you have a neighbor who you think maybe is being exploited or neglected or at risk for some other reason, just knowing that these other services exist can make a life and death difference to that neighbor. You know, you might call Pro Seniors and we say, well, we don't really handle that, but we also know who does. And so even if you reach out to any one of those agencies, including Pro Seniors, hopefully we can connect you with someone who could actually help make that person safe. Establishing your team of professionals and communicating with them your expectations of accountability. It's really important that you think about who you're authorizing these professionals to talk with as well. You know, it's great when we are of sound mind and we can be our own decision makers. It's not so great if you step off the curb and get hit by a bus and you're unconscious. And now you were the decision maker for your spouse, but you never appointed anybody to be decision maker for you. And your spouse is out of town. So who's your decision maker? And will they uphold the decisions you would make, or will they follow their own preferences? If somebody needed to have a conversation with your financial advisor, say maybe you have an extended stay in the hospital and you need to access some of your resources, have you authorized anybody else to have that communication with your financial professionals? That's one of those conversations you want to have with your family, with your loved ones, and with those financial professionals. Avoid misuse of power of attorney. You know, power of attorney can be seen as a license to steal, because depending on what you have written into your power of attorney, we've seen power of attorney documents say, can gift anything they want to. Well, they really can't, and that's probably not what your intention was, because that means they could gift your house to themselves. So there's something to be said for actually working with a licensed elder law attorney, someone who's an expert in that field, to draft a legal document that really covers what's appropriate, what isn't, what you do not want done as much as what you do want done, including appropriate boundaries in there. When does this go into effect? Is it in effect now, or is it in effect when I can no longer make those decisions? Am I appointing someone who's going to follow their own wishes, or are they going to respect my wishes, even if they disagree with them? And communicate with family and loved ones. What are your wishes, and have you told them? You know, it's sometimes awkward to have those conversations. One thing I will say, you know, my aunt's 93. Her dad died when he was 92. So I think she's thinking times are coming, and she's fine with that. You know, she's happy, she's healthy, but she's also lived 92, 93 years, and so she talks about death, but not in a morbid way. She's just like, this is where the papers are, and this is where I keep this, and she tells me and her kids all these things because she's been the one who's had to settle the estates for her own parents, her mother's sisters, her brother's wife. So she's been through this process so many times, and she does not want it to be a headache for anybody else. So she's very good at communicating all these things. But if we ask ourselves, are we very good at communicating all those things? We probably are not all as open about those things, and we're not having those conversations. That's a really good way to make sure that your wishes are honored, is to sit down and have those conversations. Charity and investment scams are other things to watch out for. You need to verify who you're talking to. Is that person licensed? Is the product that they're selling licensed, or are they a registered charity? In Ohio, the charities should be registered with the Ohio Attorney General if they're a legitimate charity. So someone calling you from some benevolent association asking you for a donation, I know what I usually say is, I have designated charities that I contribute to, and you're not on my list this year. Good luck with your efforts. And that way I don't even have to get into it. But really, you always want to check out a nonprofit, or check out a charity before you contribute. Read the fine print. I know none of us want to, but that's what you need to do. Get all commitments in writing. If someone offers you a great deal, but it's not written into the contract that way, it doesn't exist. And I managed our long-term care ombudsman program at Pro Seniors for about 18 years. And one of the things we came up against a lot as advocates for people using long-term care is that in an assisted living agreement, they would have the marketing person say that there was this available and that available, and oh, this sounds great. But then come time to use that marketing person had moved on, and nobody had anything written in the agreement that said that mom could get 2 showers a day if that's what she wanted. And so, be careful about checking out that the document that you sign actually has the detail in it that the marketing person has mentioned. Review contracts with a trusted attorney, and monitor your statements. Pam made this point. Monitor your statements and report any suspicious activity. We talked some about this too. Establish and strengthen connections with people who you know at the businesses you use. We can do online banking, and we can do a lot of things online, but the relationships that you already have are the ones that help to keep you safe too. So if you go into the same bank and do your banking there all the time, chances are they get to know you. So if you have a nephew or a neighbor who suddenly befriends you, and suddenly you're always coming to the bank with them, and you're drawing out amounts of money that you don't normally draw out, your bank has got your back. They are much more likely to know that that's an unusual transaction for you, and to know that they could be concerned for you, that this is not typical. And I think financial institutions are getting very good at being better stewards of their customers in that way. Use trusted organizations to inform your decisions, like Pro Seniors, Council on Aging, which is our area agency on aging for Southwest Ohio, law enforcement, Cincinnati Area Senior Services. There are a lot of good organizations in Southwest Ohio to really, and throughout the state of Ohio, to really help you protect yourself. Use the Do Not Call list. We recognize that the Do Not Call list doesn't keep people from foreign countries from calling us and trying to offer us scams, but it can help reduce some of the telemarketing calls. And there are similar issues or options, like Pam mentioned, for getting off of the unsolicited credit card offers and so forth. Just recognizing and avoiding high-pressure sales tactics. Just stay out of those situations and report suspicious activity to law enforcement. You're not isolated, you're all here today, but you may know people in your life who really isolate, who really don't keep their connections, and that isolation is another factor that really contributes to their risk of exploitation. There's lots of ways to connect in your community beyond what you do through normal interactions. Becoming a volunteer, connecting with community organizations, joining your community council, your neighborhood watch.
Hey Pam, I have a quick question.
Mary, yeah.
On the Do Not Call list, how do you add your cell phone number to that list? Is there a website to go to, or a phone number you can call, or?
Right. So one of the handouts I have from the Attorney General's office is all about phone scams. And this is going to be in your bag when you take it home. And at the back of the elder fraud publication is information about the Do Not Call list, and also about the mailing marketing publications and how to get on those lists, to get off the mailing list. So good question, and it'll explain all of that. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
It's a charge for something we didn't order. Good catch. I don't think you should ever pay for any bill unless you have first made sure that all the charges are correct.
Speaking of which, have you heard of the latest Medicare scams? This happened to my friend. A man came to her door claiming he was from Medicaid. He had a smooth line about helping seniors with the high cost of their medicines, but she had to give him her Medicare number right then before the deadline. Well, when she got her Medicare summary notice, it was full of charges for services she hadn't received. Turns out this guy was a scam artist.
Medicare already has everyone's number. They wouldn't need to ask for it.
Scams like these hurt every taxpayer, draining billions from Medicare and making it harder for people like us to get the health benefits we're entitled to. So I did something about it. I joined the Senior Medicare Patrol, where I work with other volunteers to teach my neighbors how to protect their Medicare numbers, review statements to spot false charges and detect errors, and report suspected fraud.
So that's one of the ways that you can volunteer, and Pro Seniors is the agency for Senior Medicare Patrol in Ohio, and we provide free training to anyone who's interested, who wants to go through the volunteer training, to learn how to recognize the scams that particularly target Medicare beneficiaries. And you can learn a lot about Medicare that way in general too, just by becoming a volunteer. We have volunteers throughout the state of Ohio who go to events and share information about how to recognize Medicare, how to recognize Medicare fraud scams, and those can really help you to just know what to look for and what those potential frauds may appear as, whether it's on your Medicare summary notice or whether it's some other mechanism like diabetic supplies are a big area of fraud, that someone who receives diabetic supplies through the mail, you can only have one diabetic supplier under Medicare rules. But there are companies that will send out diabetic supplies to a consumer even though it's not something that person wants, and if they can get that Medicare number from that individual, now they've switched providers. And so you really have to be careful and be aware of all those marketing practices and so forth, just to avoid becoming one of the new customers of a company you don't really want. So just in summary, just some other things about Pro Seniors. If you're 60 and over and you live in Butler, Claremont, Clinton, Hamilton, or Warren County and need advice or representation, Pro Seniors attorneys may be able to help you. And we always start with a call to our legal hotline for a 30-minute telephone consultation. It's set for 30 minutes so that you know exactly when they're going to call, so you don't have to wait at home as if you're getting your cable updated or something. We also have something called the Mid-America Pension Rights Project, which helps people locate their pensions, particularly if your company's changed hands several times since you retired. It may be difficult to access those benefits, or if you're the survivor of a beneficiary who has a pension coming. We also work specifically on targeting problems with financial exploitation, and there's a flyer in your folder about that. And we have Medicare specialist attorneys who can help with Medicare issues and other issues at Pro Seniors. As I tell people, you can call Pro Seniors about any legal issue, whether it's your neighbor's tree fell on your fence and you're not sure who's responsible, or if you're confused about something to do with your Social Security benefits. And they are specific to this part of Ohio, but there are ombudsmen throughout the state of Ohio serving as advocates for people in all of those settings. And what the ombudsman does is they inform people about their rights. They answer questions about quality of services and quality of rights, and they also address concerns from residents and others. Our local ombudsman program also has a crime victim assistance program to assist people who've been a victim of crime in a long-term care setting, because crime can happen anywhere. And one of my other roles is with Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol, and one of your handouts in your bag today is a flyer about how to protect, detect, and report Medicare fraud. And that's this flyer here. This will be in the bag that you get to take home with you. Our volunteers help people throughout the state of Ohio recognize and report Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse. They give presentations, and they staff health fairs and things of that nature to help give out information and respond to questions.
Mary, I have one other question.
Yes.
So as pros, a lot of some of these people they might be here in Kentucky. Is there a pro seniors equivalent in Kentucky?
There isn't a pro seniors, but there is Senior Services of Northern Kentucky. And actually, if you call pro seniors, we have all those contact numbers at our front desk, and our receptionist is really good at directing you to the comparable agency for Northern Kentucky or for another state. There is an ombudsman program in every state. There is a senior Medicare patrol in every state. So comparable services are available in the other states.
And this is your 5-minute warning.
Thank you. We're on time. Good. So the other thing I would encourage is that you keep track of places that you can go for help. And there are other publications in your bag that you're putting in today, the Elder Fraud publication from the Ohio Attorney General's office. And again, in Kentucky, there are comparable programs. There's a flyer in here about if you are an identity theft victim, and one about phone scams. I've also put in one about free credit reports, how to get them, and there's a really good explanation in this. This is a publication of the Federal Trade Commission. And then there are a couple of flyers in there about volunteering. There are 2 different ways to volunteer with pro seniors. One of them is with Senior Medicare Patrol, which I mentioned, and the other is with our Ombudsman program, and there's information about both. I've also included some information about something called managing someone else's money. You know, we've talked about you being a victim of exploitation, but oftentimes we get shouldered with, oh, I get to be your power of attorney, yay. So, you know, that may be a responsibility you didn't want, but now you've got. So there's a publication that I've included today from the Consumers Financial Protection Bureau called Managing Someone Else's Money. And it's a really good guide just to help guide you on what do I need to be doing, what kind of records should I be keeping. So if you're taking care of someone else's financial situation, you know where to turn. And then finally, there's one, your disaster checklist. And this is also from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And it's just a good, quick reference for what information do I need to have at the ready, should there be, I mean, sadly, we've had some pretty bad weather conditions in Southwest Ohio and Kentucky, and so we know there's a reason why we need these things. So I would just encourage you to have numbers like this at the ready so that they're useful to you and easily accessible. And this is how Pro Seniors is funded and our contact information, which will all be available to you in your booklet.